There are moments in life when joy comes upon us uninvited, like a sudden shaft of sunlight piercing through heavy clouds, or a melody drifting in from beyond the walls of our world. It does not seem to be of our making, nor does it bend to our will. It arrives like a stranger, yet strangely familiar, awakening within us a longing for something greater, something that cannot be contained by the fleeting pleasures of earth. Joy, I have long believed, is never satisfied with itself. It points beyond itself, as a road sign points to a destination it is not. We may taste it in the laughter of a child, in the fragrance of spring blossoms, or in the silence of a starlit sky, but always, once tasted, we are left hungrier than before. That hunger is not a defect. It is a clue. It is eternity knocking at the door of time. When I speak of joy, I do not mean mere happiness or passing amusement. Happiness is like the warmth of a hearth, pleasant, comforting, but ultimately bound to the house in which it burns. Joy, however, is like a sudden glimpse of the fire beyond the horizon, a flame we did not light and cannot contain. It is more like longing than possession, more like an echo than a full symphony. Indeed, joy is paradoxical in this sense. It wounds us with its sweetness. It whispers of something we cannot yet reach. And yet we know at once that it is the very thing for which our souls were made. Consider the way a child feels when he first sees the sea. The waves roll endlessly, carrying within them a power both terrifying and beautiful. The child may fill his hands with water, but he cannot carry the ocean home. Joy is much the same. We encounter it, but we cannot own it. It slips through our grasp, not because it is illusory, but because it belongs to another country, the true homeland of the soul. I have often thought that joy is one of God's most subtle gifts. He does not thrust eternity upon us all at once. Instead, He hides eternity in small foretastes, a passage in a book that startles us awake, a song that lingers long after it has ended, or the radiant face of a friend whose presence feels like home. These are not accidents. They are sacraments in miniature, earthly things set apart to reveal a heavenly reality. They stir within us a yearning, what the Germans call Sehnsucht, that deep, aching desire for something more. Yet, how often we mistake joy for the object through which it comes. We clutch at the song, the book, the place, or even the person, thinking that if only we could hold them forever, the joy would remain. But, inevitably, the joy fades. The song ends. The book closes. The holiday is over. And we are left with a peculiar ache, as if a door had closed just as we were about to enter. Here lies the secret. Joy was never in those things themselves. They were only windows, translucent panes through which the light of eternity streamed for a moment. To turn them into idols is to confuse the window with the sun. In truth, joy always carries a double edge. It delights us, and yet it makes us restless. It comforts us, and yet it leaves us unsatisfied. The paradox is intentional. For God never meant us to rest in His gifts, as if they were the end of the journey. The gifts are signposts. Their very fading is part of the message. Not here, not yet, but soon. Joy teaches us that earth is not our home, but the road leading home. Now, let us ask, why does joy surprise us as though it were a stranger? Why do we not expect it? After all, we live in a world so marred by suffering, toil, and monotony that joy often seems out of place, an intruder among the gray stones of ordinary days. Yet it is precisely because joy does not belong to this fallen order that it startles us. It is a guest from another realm, a messenger from heaven, slipping into the marketplace of earth. In its presence, we feel momentarily dislocated, as if the veil were drawn back and we glimpsed a reality more solid than our own. There is a sense, too, in which joy humbles us. It breaks through our careful plans, our schedules, our guarded hearts, and reminds us that the greatest things in life cannot be manufactured. One may prepare for entertainment, but joy cannot be staged. One may purchase pleasure, but joy cannot be bought. It is as though God Himself insists upon having the first word, reminding us that all true delight is His gift and His alone. And if joy is indeed a gift from God, then what does it signify? I believe it signifies promise. Each glimpse of joy is a token, a pledge of something greater yet to come. It is like the aroma of a feast drifting in from a hall we have not yet entered, or the faint sound of music from a celebration still distant. We are invited not merely to enjoy these foretastes, but to let them awaken hope. For joy does not exist to satisfy us now, but to prepare us for satisfaction then. Thus, joy is a glimpse of eternity. It is heaven breaking into time, though only for an instant, to assure us that what our hearts long for is not a fantasy, but a future. Every time joy startles us, whether in beauty, in love, in truth, we are being reminded this world is not the end. The story is larger than you imagine. If joy is indeed a messenger from eternity, we must learn how to receive it rightly. For there are two errors into which we often fall. The first is to chase joy as though it were the end itself. We run after pleasures, after amusements, after endless novelties, hoping to reproduce that first piercing sweetness. But in doing so, we find the joy eludes us. Like a bird, it will not be caged. The harder we clutch, the quicker it vanishes. The second error is to dismiss joy altogether as an illusion, a mere trick of the mind, some accidental firing of nerves, or a mood without meaning. Yet the poverty of such a view is plain. If joy were a mere illusion, why does it feel more real than the world around us? Why does it leave us more awake, more alive, more ourselves than any common pleasure ever could? Joy cannot be chased, nor can it be dismissed. It must be received, and in receiving it, we must follow where it points. It is a signpost, not the destination. Imagine a traveler who, upon seeing a sign that reads Jerusalem 20 miles, falls down before the wooden signpost and begins to worship it. He may sing songs to it, kiss it, even guard it jealously. Yet he will never arrive in Jerusalem if he confuses the sign with the city. So it is with joy. The true wisdom is to lift one's eyes from the gift to the giver, from the glimmer of eternity to the Eternal One Himself. This, I think, is why joy so often wounds us with longing. It is not content merely to make us smile. It leaves us restless, dissatisfied with the shadows of this world, until we look beyond them. Joy is the echo of a voice we have not yet fully heard, the fragrance of a flower we have not yet seen, the foretaste of a feast we have not yet tasted. If joy could speak, it would say, "Follow me, for I come from home." And here we discover something of great importance. Joy is not only a gift, it is also a calling. God uses joy to summon us. Just as pain can awaken us to our need for healing, so joy awakens us to our need for heaven. Pain says, "This world is broken. You are not at home here." Joy says, "There is a world where all is whole. You were made for it." Between these two voices, God draws us, sometimes by severity, sometimes by delight, toward Himself. Perhaps you have known such a moment, standing on a hill as the sun sets, and for no reason you can explain, a pang shoots through your chest, a longing both sweet and unbearable. Or you hear a few notes of music, notes you could not have composed, and suddenly you are weeping, though not from sorrow. What has happened? You have been ambushed by joy, and in that ambush lies revelation. Your soul has remembered, however dimly, the country from which it came. And yet, we must be careful. Joy is not given to make us despise this life, nor to turn us into mere dreamers pining for escape. Rather, it transfigures this life. Once we understand that the joys of earth are shadows of a greater reality, we begin to cherish them more deeply, not less. For the laughter of a child, the fragrance of a rose, the warmth of friendship, all these are not meaningless accidents. They are glimpses of glory. They are threads woven into the larger tapestry. We love them more truly when we love them as reflections of their source. Thus, joy does not make us neglectful of the present. It makes us more grateful. For gratitude is the proper posture of one who knows he is receiving foretastes of something greater. To clutch is to lose. To give thanks is to see clearly. Gratitude transforms joy from a fleeting moment into a lasting testimony. But there is another side. The absence of joy, the dryness of spirit, the gray weariness that so often accompanies our days, these too have their place. They remind us that earth cannot sustain the soul forever. Were joy constant here, we might mistake the shadowlands for heaven. God, in His mercy, allows joy to come as a visitor, not a permanent resident. He knows that we must learn to wait, to hope, to trust. The silence between joys is itself a teacher, urging us not to settle too soon, not to pitch our tents in a land that is not the promised country. And so we live in this tension, between the sudden brightness of joy and the long stretches of ordinary time, between the taste of honey and the bread of daily toil, between the whisper of eternity and the clamor of passing days. This tension is not cruelty, it is preparation. For what child, upon receiving a single sweet, does not imagine the feast that awaits? What bride, upon hearing the footstep of her beloved, does not long for the full embrace? So too with us. Joy is the footstep, the aroma, the first glimmer. It is not the end, but the beginning of the end. If joy is a beginning, then we must ask, what does it begin? It begins the awakening of our souls to their true inheritance. For man, in his forgetfulness, so often behaves as though he belonged only to earth. We busy ourselves with possessions, with careers, with amusements, with the building of little empires destined to crumble. Yet joy intrudes, reminding us that our citizenship is elsewhere. It is as though heaven itself leans down and whispers, "You were made for more." And once we have heard that whisper, nothing on earth can wholly satisfy. This is why joy carries within it both delight and longing. The delight assures us that there is such a thing as fulfillment. The longing assures us that we have not yet attained it. If it were only delight, we would grow complacent. If it were only longing, we would fall into despair. But God, in His wisdom, gives us both, so that our hearts remain in motion, always seeking Him, never content with substitutes. Let me offer an image. Imagine a traveler walking through a dense forest at dusk. The trees are dark, the path uncertain, the air heavy with shadows. Suddenly, through the branches, he sees a single star break forth in the sky. It is not yet the dawn. It does not remove the darkness. But it is enough to remind him that night is not eternal, that morning is promised. That is what joy does. It pierces the twilight of this world with a light that is not its own, a light borrowed from the coming day. And notice how joy often comes when least expected. You may be engaged in ordinary tasks, washing dishes, turning the page of a book, walking in the rain, and suddenly, unbidden, it arrives. This suddenness is part of its character. It cannot be conjured, but only received. Were it predictable, it would become mere pleasure, and we would enslave it to our wills. But joy resists captivity. It comes freely, that we may learn to look up in gratitude rather than down in possession. Now, what is the lesson here for our pilgrimage? It is this: we must train ourselves to recognize joy as a messenger, not as an intruder. Too many of us brush it aside. We feel the pang of longing and quickly bury it under noise, distraction, or analysis. We are like men who, hearing the knock of a friend at the door, put on the gramophone louder so that we need not rise to answer. Yet joy knocks for a reason. Its call is not to be stifled, but to be heeded. You see, the soul has two great schools, suffering and joy. Suffering teaches us endurance, humility, dependence. Joy teaches us desire, gratitude, and hope. Both are necessary. Both, when rightly received, lead us to God. And just as we must not curse the one, so we must not squander the other. To squander joy is to let eternity slip past unnoticed, to allow a crack in the veil to close without peering through. But what of those who rarely feel joy? What of the weary soul who says, "I do not remember the last time I was surprised by delight"? To such a one I would say, take heart. The absence of joy is not proof of God's absence. Sometimes it is precisely in the dryness that God deepens our hunger, enlarging the vessel so that it may one day hold more. A desert does not prove there is no water. It proves how precious the spring will be when it is found. And when at last joy comes, it will not be a trickle, but a river. There is also this: even memory of joy has power. Think of a moment, perhaps years past, when joy ambushed you. Perhaps it was standing by the sea, or hearing a song, or seeing the face of one you loved. That memory, though dim, is not without purpose. It is like an ember, still glowing in the ashes. If you tend it with gratitude, it may yet spark into flame. For memory itself can serve as a bridge to eternity, reminding us that the story of our lives is woven with hints of a glory we have not yet reached. And here lies the greatest mystery of joy. It is both fleeting and eternal. Fleeting in its earthly appearance, eternal in its origin. fleeting like a drop of rain, eternal like the ocean from which it comes. We are tempted to lament its brevity, but perhaps we should instead marvel that such eternity has touched us at all, for if eternity has brushed against time once, it shall do so again. Therefore, let us not despise the small joys, nor demand that they be more than they are. A flower fades, a melody ends, a sunset dies into darkness. But each has done its work if it has lifted our gaze heavenward. The fleetingness of joy is not a failure. It is an invitation. It tells us, "This is not all. There is more. Wait, and you shall see." Thus, joy is never wasted, never trivial, never vain. It is the divine pledge written into the fabric of creation, assuring us that the author of our story intends a glorious conclusion. Every joy, no matter how small, is a footnote to the great promise. "Behold, I make all things new." If joy is indeed a divine pledge, then it carries with it not merely comfort, but responsibility. For every gift from God is also a summons. The presence of joy asks something of us. It asks that we remember, that we hope, that we turn our faces toward the giver. Too often we treat joy as though it were a passing amusement, to be consumed and forgotten. But true joy is meant to be cherished, pondered and woven into the fabric of our souls as reminders of what is coming. Think of Israel in the wilderness. God fed them with manna, bread from heaven, and commanded that a portion of it be kept in the ark as a testimony for generations to come. Why? Because the people were forgetful. They saw miracles in the morning and murmured by night. So God, in His wisdom, gave them memorials. Joy functions much the same way. Each joy is like a fragment of manna, fallen from heaven to sustain us on the journey. We are not to consume it thoughtlessly, but to remember it, for memory nourishes hope. And what is hope, if not the child of joy? Joy awakens longing, and longing, when embraced in faith, becomes hope. This is why despair so often begins with forgetfulness, forgetting the moments of light, forgetting the glimpses of eternity. If we neglect the memory of joy, we will be tempted to think that the darkness is all there is. But when we treasure joy in our hearts, we carry with us a lantern that no night can fully extinguish. Yet we must go further still. For joy is not only personal, it is communal. We are not meant to hoard it in silence, but to share it. How often a friend's joy becomes our own. When someone we love tastes delight, it echoes within us, enlarging our own hearts. The very act of recounting joy to another breathes life into the memory. Just as sorrow shared is halved, so joy shared is doubled. This, too, is by God's design. For we are not solitary pilgrims, but fellow travelers, and joy binds us together as foretastes of the fellowship that awaits us in heaven. But here lies a subtle danger: envy. When another experiences joy, we may be tempted to feel deprived, as though their joy somehow diminishes our portion. Yet the truth is the opposite. The kingdom of God is not a pie that shrinks as it is divided. Rather, it is a fountain whose waters grow deeper as more drink from it. To rejoice in another's joy is to train our hearts for heaven, where love knows no rivalry. Perhaps you have felt this yourself. A friend speaks of a moment when joy overtook them, a sudden clarity in prayer, a beauty that left them trembling, and as you listen, something stirs within you. You are not excluded from their joy. You are invited into it. Their glimpse of eternity becomes, in a mysterious way, your own. Thus, even when our own lives feel barren, we may be nourished by the joys of others, if only we have the humility to receive them. And still, the paradox remains. Joy is both arrival and departure. It arrives to fill us, and then departs, leaving us hungry. Some resent its departure, thinking it cruel. But I would say the opposite. Its departure is mercy. For if joy remained perpetually on earth, we would cling to the shadows and forget the sun. Joy leaves us restless, so that we might seek its true source. The pang of longing it leaves behind is not punishment, but invitation. I recall once reading that the homing instinct in birds is sharpened by hunger. When they are well fed, they linger. When they are empty, they take flight. So too with us. Joy comes, it feeds us, and then it withdraws, leaving us hungry enough to keep moving homeward. Without that hunger, we would settle in the wilderness and forget the promised land. And so the Christian life is not about banishing longing, but about learning to interpret it. The world teaches us to smother longing with distractions, more possessions, more pleasures, more noise. But joy teaches us to direct longing toward God. Longing, rightly understood, is not a wound but a compass. It is the arrow of the soul pointing toward its true north. Therefore, when joy comes, let us welcome it with gratitude. And when it departs, let us not despair, but let the longing it leaves behind drive us further into God. In this way, joy serves as both feast and fast, filling us for a moment, then sending us onward in hunger for the eternal banquet. For what, after all, is heaven, if not joy without departure? Joy unbroken, joy unending, joy that no shadow can quench. Every fleeting joy here is a rehearsal for that great symphony. Every surprise a note in the overture, every pang a reminder that the final act has not yet begun. If heaven is indeed the place of unbroken joy, then the glimpses we taste here are not only hints of what is to come, they are also preparations. God is schooling us in joy, teaching us the language of heaven, even while we still live among the shadows. Consider, if a man were suddenly transported to a foreign land without first learning its tongue, he would be bewildered, unable to join in its songs or understand its stories. So too with us. Joy on earth is like a lesson, an alphabet of eternity. By it, we learn how to rejoice rightly, so that when the doors of heaven at last swing wide, we will know the music by heart. But how easily we mispronounce the lesson. We confuse joy with mere excitement, or with bodily pleasure, or with sentimental emotion. None of these are evil in themselves, but they are not the thing itself. They are, at best, distant cousins of joy. True joy is sterner, deeper, more radiant. It does not depend on circumstance, nor can it be manufactured by mood. It comes from beyond, and because it comes from beyond, it demands humility. We must be content to receive what we cannot control, to be surprised by what we cannot summon. There is also this: joy requires surrender. For joy often breaks in when our defenses are lowered, when for a moment we stop trying to manage life and simply behold. Think of those times when a sudden beauty arrests you, a shaft of light through stained glass, the laughter of a child at play, the fragrance of rain upon dry ground. You did not plan it. You did not deserve it. You simply received it. And in that receiving lies the heart of joy. It is grace in another form. This is why pride is such an enemy of joy. The proud man wishes to be in control, to be the author of his own delight. He seeks to master, to possess, to orchestrate every note of his life. But joy refuses to bow to such tyranny. It comes only to the humble, the one who can be astonished, the one who knows he is a creature and not the Creator. "Unless you become like little children," said our Lord, "you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Children know how to receive. They are startled into delight by the simplest of gifts. Joy finds fertile soil in such hearts. And yet joy is not merely passive. It is not something we only wait for. There is a sense in which we can make ourselves more open to it, more attuned to its quiet knock, just as one who tunes his ear to music can detect melodies others miss. So the soul trained in gratitude and attention becomes sensitive to joy. The hurried, distracted life, always chasing the next task, often misses the subtle gleams of eternity. But the soul that learns to pause, to give thanks, to wonder, that soul finds joy waiting at every corner. Perhaps this is why joy so often hides in the ordinary. We expect it in grand occasions, in rare spectacles, but more often it steals upon us in the common moments. Washing dishes by lamplight, hearing the rustle of leaves, smelling bread warm from the oven. These are not trivialities when seen with the eyes of the heart. They are the stage on which heaven rehearses its song. Joy does not disdain the ordinary. It transfigures it. And here we see something remarkable. Joy, though fleeting in time, has a permanence in eternity. The moment passes, but it is not lost. God gathers every fragment of joy, every drop of delight, and weaves them into the eternal tapestry of his kingdom. "Nothing wasted," says the Redeemer. Even the smallest joy, received with gratitude, becomes immortal. For in heaven, all the scattered foretastes of earth will be gathered into one banquet, one symphony, one great unveiling. This should give us courage. For there are days when joy feels distant, when life is a monotony of labor or a burden of grief. Yet even then, we live under the promise that joy is not gone, but hidden. The world may appear gray, but heaven is still shining, and in due time the veil will lift again. The memory of past joy and the promise of future joy sustain us through the desert places. "Weeping may endure for the night," says the psalmist, "but joy comes in the morning." Ah, but that morning, when joy is no longer a stranger, no longer a fleeting visitor, but the very air we breathe, then longing will be swallowed up in fulfillment, and restlessness in perfect rest. Then we shall see not merely glimpses, but the face itself. And every joy we have ever known will be revealed as a spark of that uncreated light. And so, I say, do not despise joy's brevity. Do not resent its surprises. Instead, treasure it as one treasures a letter from a loved one far away. The letter is not the beloved, yet it assures us that the beloved is real, and that reunion is certain. Each joy is such a letter, written by the hand of God, reminding us that we are known, loved, and awaited. And so, my friends, we return at last to where we began, with joy, this strange visitor, this sudden and unbidden guest that enters the chambers of our hearts and leaves us trembling with longing. If there is one thing I would have you carry away, it is this: joy is never an accident. It is not the product of chance, nor the mere flicker of our emotions. It is rather a message from eternity, a small foretaste of the banquet prepared for us since the foundation of the world. When joy comes, receive it as one receives a royal envoy. Do not clutch it to yourself as though it could be owned, nor dismiss it as though it were trivial. Lift your eyes to the one who sent it, for every joy is an arrow pointing upward, every joy a window through which the light of heaven streams. If you trace the arrow to its source, if you follow the light back to the sun, then you will discover that what you thought was fleeting was in truth everlasting. We must also remember that joy is not given for itself alone. It is given to strengthen us on the pilgrimage. Life, as we know, is often hard. It is full of burdens and losses, disappointments and sorrows. The temptation is to think that the shadows are the substance, and that our weariness is the final word. But joy interrupts that illusion. It says, no, the shadows are not the substance. There is a greater light. Each joy, however brief, is a token of victory, a reminder that the author of our story has written not tragedy, but triumph. And if this is true, then we need not fear the longing joy leaves behind. That longing is not a wound, but a compass. It is the soul's homing instinct, urging us toward the place where every tear shall be wiped away and every joy shall be complete. To feel the pang of longing is to know that your heart is still alive, still reaching, still remembering its true home. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst, for they shall be filled. What, then, shall we do in the meantime? We live attentively. We cultivate gratitude. We treasure every joy as a whisper of eternity. And we share that joy with others, not hoarding it as our private possession, but multiplying it in love. For in God's kingdom, joy increases the more it is given away. When at last the day comes and the veil is lifted, we shall discover that all the scattered joys of earth, the laughter of friends, the beauty of a starlit sky, the music that once pierced us with longing, were not wasted moments, but threads of the same eternal tapestry. Then, seeing the whole, we shall fall silent with wonder, for the glimpses we once called joy will be revealed as fragments of the great and final joy, the presence of God Himself. So I leave you with this: do not ignore joy, and do not fear it. Let it surprise you, let it wound you, let it awaken you. For in every joy, however small, heaven leans close, and eternity whispers your name. And if these reflections have spoken to you, I would invite you with gratitude to join me further on this journey. Share this message with others who may also be longing for the same eternal home. Leave your thoughts, your reflections, your own encounters with joy in the comments, that we may encourage one another. And, if you wish to walk with me still further, like this video and subscribe, so that, together, we may keep lifting our eyes from the shadows to the light. For joy is not the end but the beginning, and the true joy, eternal, unbroken, and complete, awaits us still.